I don't think he won the I don't think, we were all here. He didn't win the White House on a message of, I am going to overthrow the Iranian regime and enact a regime change in Tehran. He did not.
Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchable News. It's Monday, March 2nd, 2026. Let's get in the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, Congress's war over war with Iran. Number two, the Pentagon policy chief is set to head to Capitol Hill, what he'll say. And number three, what the Anthropic mess with the Trump administration means for Congress. All right, Jake, it was a very busy weekend here in Washington. And we are teeing up this morning's newsletter, looking at how Congress is now facing the war over the war, with President Donald Trump plunging the United States into its riskiest military gamble in 2 decades, overthrowing the Iranian regime. Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill are locked in a struggle over every facet of the conflict, military, political, and even morale, we write at the top of this morning's newsletter.
Yeah, we are now at war, and you could say it's not war, but it is. Trump did not go to Congress. That has been well established. The Gang of Eight was read in, briefed, but a war of this magnitude is happening, and Congress was none the wiser, basically. Let's leave aside for a second the obvious, really difficult things about war, which is war is terrible substantively. It is incredibly risky. It is dangerous, etc. Let's talk about Congress for a second. Every public opinion poll that I've seen shows that Americans are opposed to a war with Iran. This president ran for the White House, suggesting that he was not going to do this. And what Trump is now saying is we're going to be involved in a war for anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks, is essentially what he said in a bunch of interviews he did over the weekend. 3 people are dead, more are likely to die, and we don't know what's going to happen next in Iran. A nation of 90 million people, a complex nation, not that any nation is simple, but a complex nation that has been ruled by an Islamic regime since 1979. And those are the table stakes here. And how we're beginning this conflict, a conflict that, in many ways has been years in the making.
For sure. I mean, I think the stakes in Congress is what we focus on, right? So the thing that's going to be important is there's going to be briefings on Capitol Hill today and tomorrow. What is the reaction so far? Democrats are making kind of, I think, probably a couple different arguments, right? The idea that Trump didn't seek Congress's authorization before initiating hostilities. Congress has given up a lot of its power when it comes to, they haven't actually, called for war or said that there was a war since World War II, right? And there's been a lot of conflicts that the U.S. has been involved in. But the political case they're going to be making here, Jake, is that we don't know exactly, as you laid out, like how long it's going to last, what the U.S. involvement is, what the U.S. potential will be for loss of lives. But you also have the politics of this, right? Where you have Democrats making the political case that we should be talking about the economy, affordability. All signs point to this hurting the markets and the price of gas going up and a lot of other things.
Even more simple than that, Anna, it does nothing to bring down costs, which is why President Trump won the White House. I mean, I don't think he won the I don't think, we were all here. He didn't win the White House on a message of, I am going to overthrow the Iranian regime and enact a regime change in Tehran. He did not. So listen, the House is not coming back until Wednesday. I mean, they're back Tuesday without any votes, but they're voting on Wednesday, and the Senate's back tonight. The question is, what power does Congress have? And not much. There's going to be a vote in the House and the Senate on a war powers resolution, which is something the president will veto if it passes in either chamber, and I don't think Congress could uphold the veto. The question is, if Trump needs more money, Congress will have some authority, some leverage, because Democrats will be needed in either situation, although the Pentagon has a bunch of money, and I don't think he'll need more money unless this is a months-long conflict that is much more involved than we foresee at the moment. Just a note here, Marco Rubio and John Ratcliffe, Secretary of State, CIA Director, will be on Capitol Hill at 4 p.m. today for leadership and Gang of Eight and ranking members of armed services and foreign relations. Rubio, Ratcliffe, Pete Hegseth, and Dan Kane, chair of the Joint Chiefs, will be on the Hill for a pair of briefings tomorrow at 5 p.m. And those are the headlines going into this week. The politics here are really difficult for Republicans. And by the way, will only get more difficult if there is more loss of life and if the situation in Iran turns into a mess. Remember what Colin Powell said, Anna, the Pottery Barn rule, if you break it, you own it, which is couldn't be more true today.
A lot of questions going into this week, and we'll have to see how lawmakers answer them in the short term and in the long term. I think cost certainly also just, how open this administration is going to be. And as you say, what is Iran's future? Who's going to run the country? Will the Trump administration have a say in who that is and how they're governed? I mean, these are all right now big questions that Congress is certainly going to want a lot of answers for. All right, Jake, let's turn to the number 2 story of the morning. Pentagon Policy Chief Elbridge Colby's effort to sell wary lawmakers this week on the Trump administration's vision for American defense abroad just got even more daunting. This was scheduled before the strikes in Iran and the kind of war in the Middle East. But our Pentagon policy reporters, our defense policy reporters, sat down with Colby last week before the attack to talk about Trump's national defense strategy and the overtures that they have been making to try to rebuild a relationship that was pretty fraught, Jake.
This is big because Colby doesn't really do much press, and put bluntly, and Brianna and Anthony are terrific, tremendous defense reporters. Talked to him at the Pentagon last week, obviously before the attacks on Iran, but it's still important. The National Defense Strategy is a document that the Pentagon put out that has gotten some, mild criticism, but Colby will have the opportunity to explain himself this week and talk about what he sees as the National Defense Strategy for the United States, and more importantly, what the president sees. Now, Colby has been under some criticism for his, let's say, lack of communication or communication style, perhaps, with Capitol Hill. And he says, we have heard Congress's feedback and we have adapted our approach. There may have been imperfections in the past. They were not meant in disrespect. As we all know, the Trump administration has a different view on the world than previous Republican or Democratic presidents. And that's up to Colby to explain. It will take on even more significance when it comes to this regime change war in Iran, which launched over the weekend. So Colby is out of the frying pan into the fryer, as they say, Anna.
All right, let's move on to the number 3 story of the morning from Tech. What the Anthropic mess means for Congress, the Defense Department's stunning decision to break ties with artificial intelligence giant Anthropic has thrown another thorny tech policy debate into Congress's lap as if they didn't have enough going on. This is, really pretty stunning, right? We saw the announcement on True Social and X from the president, but this isn't an industry. This isn't just your typical, kind of a big bank or railing against, kind of some industry in the energy world. AI companies are aggressively acting when it comes to this 2020-26 midterms with super PACs, trying to get lawmakers in both parties who are friendly to their case. And there's two sides to that, right? There's the Anthropic side, and then there's the OpenAI side. But man, there's a lot of money sloshing around here, Jake.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Anthropic and OpenAI, as Diego and Ben write this morning in a great item, have very different views.
Correct.
On the world and on regulation for AI. Anthropic is of the view that they promote safety regulations for the industry, for technology. OpenAI wants a more hands-off approach from the government at all levels, and they are both backed by massive, massive political war chest. Public First Action, which is a Anthropic-backed political effort, and OpenAI, which has Leading the Future, another massive political outfit. So they are both pushing divergent points of view on Capitol Hill and in Washington, and have massive amounts of money to back it up, which is just a fascinating dynamic for a nascent technology like AI, not completely nascent, but with its prominence in society and its prominence in government. So just a great item from Diego and Ben that everyone should read this morning in the newsletter.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the Daily Punch, share it on social media, tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. And of course, you can go deeper on all these topics and more. Ali Mutnick's got a great story this morning on what's happening in Texas. In North Carolina, when it comes to incumbent Democrats potentially being challenged. Really encourage you to check out the full newsletter and our site at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.